One major struggle people face when trying to grow spiritually, even if they're serious about it, is realizing that their spiritual life and everyday life are the same. When people think of their meditation, church, beliefs, Bible, or spiritual practices as separate from their family life, work, and day-to-day responsibilities, they still don't fully get it. Eventually, people start to understand this unity, that there's no real difference between spiritual practices like meditation, reading sacred texts, traveling to see spiritual guides, and everyday tasks like cooking dinner, taking the kids to soccer, working, dealing with clients, or searching for a new job. They are all part of the same journey. Until you see them all as equal in spiritual value, you're not fully moving forward. You might have amazing moments in meditation or on trips to sacred places, and that's great, but you'll always return to your daily life. If your daily life doesn't feel as spiritual as your spiritual practices, then it's not truly spiritual. This is the core of true understanding. It's all connected, and you have to approach it all in the same spirit. We've talked about this many times, and this is where surrender, acceptance, and letting go come into play. Meditation, for example, is all about surrendering, letting go of your mind, emotions, and senses, accepting that you have to go through these stages. But somehow in everyday life, people forget this. Every second of every day, you're watching what's happening inside you and noticing what's going on around you. When you reach a certain level of awareness, you can begin to see everything as part of your spiritual journey. As you develop this awareness, you start noticing that what happens outside affects your inner state. You get frustrated, jealous, hurt, or upset based on what happens in the world around you. A conscious person on the spiritual path clearly sees how these external events impact their inner self. But most people don't notice. They just react without thinking. When something outside makes them feel love, they want to chase it, hold on to it, and keep it going. When something outside makes them fall out of love, lose passion, or feel disconnected, they want to change it. Their inner reactions to outer events drive their behavior. Eventually, you reach a point where you understand that your spiritual path means working with these inner reactions. It's not about chasing after everything your inner self wants. That would be like spoiling a child by giving in to every demand. It won't end well. If you're using your spiritual practices to attract things you want, someday you'll wake up and realize that's not the point. It's not that it doesn't work or that it's wrong. The issue is that it does work, and it's not about getting what you want. Imagine a kid with magical powers who can throw a tantrum and instantly make a toy appear whenever he wants. Now imagine raising that kid. He'd be like Dennis the Menace, but with powers. That's not a recipe for a well-adjusted adult. And when it comes to personal growth, that's what we want to avoid too. At some point, you realize that the goal isn't about getting everything you want. Instead, it's about understanding why you want certain things. It's about recognizing the link between what's happening outside you and what's happening inside. Once you do that, you start seeing that true growth isn't about always getting what you desire or running from what you don't. When you notice a strong urge to chase something, to hold on to it tightly, it becomes clear that this is pulling you out of a place of awareness. It's stopping you from being present in a higher, more conscious state, because you're wrapped up in your own attachments. There's nothing wrong with this. I'm just pointing it out to explain how things work. But to grow spiritually, you have to understand what's going on inside you and start using it to move forward. Yes, of course, you have desires, fears, things you're drawn to, and things you avoid. That's human nature. But while you're living in that reactive space, you're keeping yourself from fully understanding the divine. That's the heart of it. You have to die to those reactions and attachments to be reborn with fresh awareness. So what does that mean in everyday life? Just as in your spiritual practices, you become aware of what's happening in you without stressing over it or trying to change it. I don't even like calling it watching because that sounds like an active effort. It's more about simply noticing. You might think, I'm noticing this feeling inside me. I see my mind thinking these thoughts and I feel my heart reacting to these outside events. Let's say you were once married to someone named Ben, and things didn't go well. Now, every time you hear the name Ben, even if you're halfway across the world, something inside you feels off. Over time, you realize that these old experiences have left impressions on you. You start seeing that your reactions come from these buried experiences. It's not about thinking, I'd feel so much better if I never heard the name Ben again, so I'll avoid it. That's unrealistic and doesn't solve the issue. The real insight is understanding that there are things you didn't process or let go of back when you were with Ben, and now those things are stuck inside you. When something outside you touches on those old memories, you feel it all over again. Your only job is to notice it. That's it. Just sitting with that awareness is enough to get to the next level of understanding. Once you're noticing the connections between what's outside and what's stored inside from past experiences, you're starting to dig deep. The outside only has power over you because of those things stored inside. You've been holding on to stuff, whether it's things you loved or things you hated. You buried them in your mind and heart, and those buried experiences are called samskaras, which are patterns from your past that you never let go of. So, when the world comes at you through your senses, if something even remotely touches one of those old experiences, it brings up all those feelings again. Instead of reacting to what's actually happening, you're reacting to the past. This is the human experience. We carry all this old baggage, mostly from stuff we didn't like, and when something similar pops up, it triggers us. Now, once you understand this, you can see it's not necessarily a bad thing. This process, these stored experiences, is a part of your growth. They'll stay there your whole life unless you learn to let them go. You reach a point where you think, I don't want to carry this anymore. To truly grow, you have to die to these old patterns to be reborn as a person free of past baggage. This doesn't mean you forget your past or stop learning from it. It just means you stop clinging to old emotions or memories because you either couldn't deal with them or wanted to hold on to them so tightly that they became part of how you live. Letting go of these doesn't erase what you learned. It just removes the weight of unprocessed feelings. For instance, if you struggled with math in 5th grade and learned better in 6th, that knowledge isn't lost if you let go of the embarrassment about 5th grade struggles. The embarrassment can go, but the lesson remains. Life works the same way. You go through wins, losses, lessons, setbacks, all kinds of experiences. And somewhere along the way, you realize, I've stored all of this inside me, both the good and the bad. That's why you might feel off or weighed down because you're carrying all this unresolved stuff from your past. The problem is, you're not fully in the present because these old experiences keep getting triggered and distracting you. It's like you're constantly reacting to the ghost of your past, rather than engaging with what's actually happening now. You don't reach the present by forcing yourself to focus on being here. If you're trying to be present while holding on to all this stuff, it won't work. Being in the present means not being tied to the past. If you want to be truly present, you've got to release these old patterns. They keep pulling you down, distracting you, and shaping your actions. So to move forward, you need to be willing to let these things go. You're at a point now where your daily life is just as spiritual, if not more spiritual, than any specific spiritual practice you do. In fact, your daily life is your spiritual practice. Life itself becomes your teacher, your guru. The real question is, can you handle life, every moment of every day, with peace, balance, and a sense of contentment? Can you take every phone call, every errand, every meeting, every family issue, and interact with it as if it's a form of service, rather than feeling like you need to control or avoid certain things just because they stir up something uncomfortable inside you, or even control things to keep getting what you want? This is the next stage of spiritual growth, realizing that everything you do in your daily life is spiritual when you're in this state of mind. You start to see that the reason you sometimes struggle with meditation or inner peace is because all this junk you've held inside keeps getting in the way. Daily life, with all its challenges, helps you bring that stuff up and let it go, and that in turn makes it easier to meditate and feel calm. Meditation and daily life actually support each other. They work together, and they're both essential parts of the same spiritual journey. Every moment of life, every single experience, is part of that journey. So now that you see this, what's the next step? The answer is to let go. Let go of whatever comes up inside you when you're faced with daily situations. Don't just react automatically to either get what you want or avoid what you don't want. If you keep doing that, you'll stay stuck in the same patterns. That's fine if you're still learning from it and growing. But the real work is learning to let go of your attachments and reactions to the best of your ability. Letting go means you don't try to force life to go your way, or resist the parts you don't like. But here's where people get stuck. They might ask, if I'm letting go and not just reacting, how do I know what's the right action to take? It's a fair question. You're letting go of your old patterns, noticing your reactions without diving into them. But what do you do when life needs you to act? If you just sit back, you might feel like you're ignoring your responsibilities. You might see a desire or fear come up and think, I shouldn't act on this because it's just my reaction. But sometimes that reaction is connected to real responsibilities, your job, your family, your commitments. You can't just say, I won't do anything because I see it as a desire or fear. There are times when action is necessary, even if you're working on not letting desires and fears control you. And this is where deeper spiritual teaching comes in. This is the essence of what Buddhists call right action. It's about learning to take the right steps without being ruled by desire or fear. Right action is about finding a balance where you can engage with the world and meet your responsibilities without getting caught up in personal attachments. It's pretty easy to do the right thing when the choice is obvious. Like, should I hurt someone or say something kind to them? That's a simple decision. But when you're wrestling with deeper stuff inside, while life keeps pulling at you from the outside, things get trickier. So how do you deal with that inner struggle and still live in the world? People often talk about finding balance, but here's the truth. There's no such thing as perfect balance. It's all about growth. Everything in your life, your spiritual growth, your work, your relationships, feeds into that growth. There's no switching between worldly and spiritual life as if they're separate. It's not about saying, on Mondays I'll work hard, and on Tuesdays I'll be all about peace and meditation. Life doesn't work that way. This isn't something your mind can map out or plan for. It goes way deeper. Let's say you're in a situation where you keep feeling a strong fear or desire. You see that it keeps coming up, and your mind is racing, asking, what should I do? Take an example. Imagine there's a big hurricane heading your way, and you start worrying. The storm isn't here yet, but you're feeling anxious about what to do. You wonder, should I be preparing? Am I doing enough? That anxiousness, that need to do something even if you're not sure what, that's a perfect opportunity for growth. How? By realizing that every single moment in front of you can help you grow spiritually if you let it. So you look at yourself and see that you're feeling anxious, maybe scared of making the wrong choice. Okay, so what do you do next? Some people will go out, buy a bunch of water, batteries and other supplies to feel safer. That's their way of dealing with the anxiety, even though they may not need all that stuff. But what if, instead of letting that worry control you, you pause and ask yourself, is there anything I can actually do to stop this storm or change what it'll do? The answer is no. You can't stop the storm or control its path. Realizing that, understanding that some things are out of your hands can actually calm you down. That's where wisdom comes in. By understanding what you can't control, you can let go of a lot of unnecessary stress. That's how clear understanding leads to the right action, the kind that's really rooted in peace and acceptance. Most of the time, we don't actually accept reality as it is. We act like we have some control over it, But what we're really doing is just trying to make ourselves feel better. We think, I don't like feeling anxious or scared, so I need to do something to make that go away. But if you look closely, a lot of what you do when you feel that way isn't necessary or helpful. This urge to just do anything to feel better. That's not spiritual. It's anxiety talking. The first step is to ask, is this actually happening? Yes, it is. Can I do anything to change it? No, not really. Accepting that reality. That's the truth, even if it's not easy to deal with. Now the hard part. Can you handle the fact that there's nothing you can do about it? Your mind might fight this. It might say, no way, I need to do something. We're stuck in this struggle, and facing it is a chance to grow. You see, admitting there's nothing you can do is a big part of growth. You might not like it, but that's called surrender. It's about truly accepting what's real. This surrender, this acceptance, is the path to spiritual growth. Every situation in life, even the tough ones, can be an opportunity to grow closer to something greater. It's not about feeling more comfortable. It's about asking, is there anything I can actually do to make the situation better? Not just to make myself feel better, but to truly improve what's going on. So here you are, dealing with reality as it is. The storm is coming. Can you do anything about it? No, can you be okay with that? Probably not, at least not at first, but you look at it and say, this is real. It's going to happen. That's the truth. The storm is on its way, and there's nothing you can do to change that fact. And what about that part of you that still feels scared? The part that wants to feel in control? It's like a small child inside of you, afraid and vulnerable. But you don't want to just give in to its fear by acting on it in a panic. Instead, be kind to that part of yourself. Help it understand. Don't let it throw a tantrum and take over. Reassure it, calm it, hold its hand if you have to. The fear isn't helpful, it won't change anything, and it just stops you from handling things as they are. But it's still there, so be gentle with it. Your higher self is the clear part of you that's dedicated to growing spiritually. When you're in touch with it, you get that life itself is the teacher and guide. Life's here to help you evolve, and everything it brings, storms, struggles, joys, all of it is part of that journey. So when something tough comes up, you don't fight or ignore that struggling part of yourself. Instead, you work with it. Like the saying goes, one should raise the self of self, not trample it down. This doesn't mean pushing that scared or insecure part of yourself away. It's not about denying your fear or shutting yourself down with, I'm not scared. No, you find ways, whatever works for you, to handle that part without putting it down. This means lifting yourself up and staying kind to yourself even when fear or worry hits. The first thing you can do is accept that things will happen, and some of them are totally beyond your control. Just saying to yourself, things will happen that I can't do anything about can be powerful, like you can't stop the sun from setting tonight, no matter how much you might wish it didn't. There's a kind of peace in letting go of that need for control over what you can't change. Fighting it just makes things harder. So no matter where you are, in the middle of work, dealing with a tough day, rushing to pick up the kids or preparing dinner, you're practicing something spiritual. You're working with yourself moment by moment, checking in on how you're feeling and gently guiding yourself back to calm. This isn't some formal practice. It's simply raising your state in the moment, again and again, to find peace with what is. And that's where surrender comes in. Surrender isn't about being passive or doing whatever anyone asks. It's about facing reality and saying, is this happening? Can I change it? No. Am I okay with that? If you can say yes, that's surrender. When you surrender, you let go of the part of you that's stuck on wanting things to be exactly your way. You know that part, right? It's the one that doesn't want to face reality as it is, that wants to control how everything turns out. It's the my will part, not thy will. Surrendering is about letting go of that need to force things to go your way and accepting reality for what it is. That's where true peace lives. So things are going to happen now, and there's nothing I can do to change that. Let's say I can't do anything to change it, especially right now, and I accept that. I'm respecting that reality, even if I don't have to like it. It doesn't mean I agree with it, but I can handle facing reality for what it is. Now, what should I do? Most people don't even get to this stage of accepting reality. But if you can, take a moment to see what might happen next. Instead of wondering if I can stop things from happening, I acknowledge that it's out of my hands. The question becomes, is there something I should be doing to help with what's coming? Not to change it or make it better or worse, but just to be there and support what is happening. Now, I'm here to serve the situation. I'm no longer serving just myself, focusing only on what I want, what I don't want, or what I can or cannot handle. When I start to respect reality as it is, I can ask, how can I help? Can I help others or prepare for what's coming, like buying supplies just in case? Not out of fear, but out of clear thinking. Each person will look at it differently, and that's okay. The idea is to look at it calmly, without being emotional or reactive. More about doing the smart thing rather than just feeling safer. It's not about trying to feel safer. It's about asking, is this the right action? That's what true action is. Looking at things objectively, not through a personal lens. When you're done focusing on you, somehow reality itself will guide what's supposed to happen next. This idea is called the Tao. Lao Tzu, who taught about the Tao, meant that things unfold naturally. For example, imagine a leaf on a tree that falls off and floats to the ground. Which path should it take? Nobody decides that, not the leaf or anyone else. As it falls, gravity pulls it down, the wind might push it around, and the humidity might change how it moves. All of these forces combine to guide the leaf's path. This is what the Tao is about, living in a way where impersonal forces come together to guide you. You simply say yes to what happens. It's not about what you like or don't like. It's about being open. You're not in the way, and the natural forces of life direct you. It's amazing to see someone in this state. In the Bhagavad Gita, there's a story where Krishna, who represents wisdom, tells the warrior Arjuna that there are very few people who truly understand the universe as it is. These enlightened beings merge with reality itself. Arjuna responds with amazement, something like, "Wow, that's incredible. How would I recognize someone like this? Does he sit, walk, and talk like anyone else?" Krishna responded, "Yes, you would recognize him that way. He sits, walks, and talks like anyone else. If you want to know him, you'll notice he doesn't get overly excited in joyful times, nor does he become deeply sad during sorrowful times. He accepts goodness when it comes and lets it go when it must. He accepts darkness when it comes and lets it leave when the time is right. He walks among the ups and downs of life as if he's just a visitor, like someone who doesn't cling to things in nature. Imagine the ocean that stays steady and calm as all the rivers and streams flow into it. It never overflows. Similarly, all of life's sensory experiences flow into a yogi, a wise person, and leave him peaceful, calm, and balanced. Being in this state doesn't mean you take no action. It just means you don't react emotionally. Your actions aren't for personal reasons, not to prove anything, not even to give it to God. You're simply not there in a personal way, like the leaf being carried by natural forces. Life's events, a storm, a wedding, a death, a birth, unfold before you, and you remain steady, balanced within it. This is what Lao Tzu described as the Tao, the natural flow of life. The problem is that people want life to go according to their wishes. Do you see that? We want life to bring us what we desire and avoid what we dislike. When we do this, we interfere with the natural flow of the Tao. When you let go of the personal self, as Christ spoke of being reborn, you will truly see. But it's not even about needing to see things anymore. There's just the natural unfolding of life. People may look at you and think you're doing something impressive. They might think you're wise, talented, powerful, rich, or deeply connected to God, simply because things seem to go your way. But what they don't realize is that because you don't need things to go a certain way, It feels like life always aligns with you. So, you might be running a business and handling it well, appearing very wise in business matters. But it's not because you desire money or success. The business is just unfolding naturally, and you know how to handle it. Not because you studied business like at a top school, but because you are in tune with the natural flow of life, rather than fighting against it, loving it too much, or disliking it. This is a deep idea about using life to grow spiritually. Many people struggle with questions like, should I do this, or should I not? Or, I feel a desire. Does that mean I should avoid all attachments? Should I renounce everything? Or, I feel afraid. Does that mean I should dive into the fear? The key is to look beyond personal likes, dislikes, fears, or desires, and to align with life's natural flow. If you do things with that kind of thinking, you still have some growth to do. You're trying to make your mind decide how everything should go, like thinking the leaf should have fallen differently. But in reality, there's nothing more perfect than how that leaf fell. If you could program a supercomputer with every single force that's ever existed from the start of time, that leaf would still fall the exact same way. Gravity, wind, and every tiny detail played a part without interference, all in perfect harmony. You are also capable of living in this kind of harmony. So when people ask, should I do this or that? A wise person doesn't answer directly. Instead, they say, why don't you look at your intentions? Don't just analyze it with your mind. Look deeper at where you're coming from. If you realize you're acting out of personal desire or fear, practice letting those feelings go. Start by asking, what if I didn't feel this desire? What if I wasn't afraid? Imagine what you'd do if those feelings weren't there. Even if it's only possible in your mind, it's a good start. Imagine yourself acting from a place beyond personal wants and fears. Then do the best you can from that clearer space and learn from what happens. I've talked about this many times. If you act to the best of your ability, based on where you're at in that moment, that's beautiful. Don't worry about failure, mistakes, or what others think. Just do the best you can and treat what happens next as a lesson. The result of your actions is like a teacher. Imagine a teacher giving you a test. You might not know all the answers, but the teacher just asks you to try your best. That test becomes a valuable experience because it shows you exactly what you need to learn. If you get a low score, it's even better than a high score because you have more room to grow. The teacher will explain what you missed, and that becomes a lesson that can benefit you for life. But in our society, we're often taught just to aim for the highest grade, as if that's the only goal. With that mindset, we miss out on learning opportunities. Life isn't like school. Life says, do your best in every situation, and don't focus on rewards, praise, or trying to avoid embarrassment. If you do things only for personal reasons, you don't learn anything deep from it. Eventually, you realize this isn't the best way to live. Instead, you say, I will do my best every moment of my life, based on what I see and understand right now. You can't act from more clarity than you currently have. You can only do the best you can with what you know at the moment. This applies to both desires and fears. Sometimes, a strong desire can block your clear vision, making it hard to see beyond it. You might even recognize it as a desire, but then tell yourself, this is just who I am. I've always been this way, so I'm being true to myself. That might seem fine at the time, but later, you may realize it's not that simple. The same goes for fear. Some people say fear is natural, and in some cases it is. For example, it makes sense to fear picking up a rattlesnake because it's dangerous. But what about fears that seem to come from nowhere, like being scared to speak in public or to drive a car because you had an accident years ago, or avoiding certain things because a scene from a movie left an impact? Those fears aren't as straightforward, but we still carry them around. You can only do your best, but the mind often tries to justify these fears. It tells you, this is a reasonable fear, or it's logical to feel this way. Take a parent, for example. They might worry about their child's safety in public places, so when the child, say a 12-year-old, wants to go to the bathroom alone in a restaurant, the parent insists on going with them. On the surface, this might seem reasonable because public places can be risky. But is it really necessary in this case? At some point, you need to ask yourself, where's the line between reasonable caution and excessive fear? Because if you don't, you could end up limiting the child's independence, which can have its own negative effects. This fear might feel reasonable to the parent because they're worried. But is that truly in the best interest of the child? So, you have to make an effort to step back and make decisions that benefit everyone involved, not just yourself. I once heard about parents who lost a child and, as a result, became so protective of their other children that it was overwhelming for the kids. Their extreme fear affected the kids' freedom and happiness. At that point, you have to ask yourself, yes, tragic things happen, but should I let this one event control every decision and interaction in my life? This intense fear may feel logical because of past trauma, but would you still feel this way if that tragedy hadn't happened? The key is to question yourself objectively. Try to imagine, what if that bad thing hadn't happened? What if I hadn't gone through that loss or hurt? Would I still think and act the same way? This kind of perspective lets you step back and view your feelings and choices from a distance, using your mind to see if your reactions are truly logical. Ask yourself, if this hadn't happened, would I still be letting this fear or desire guide my life? This thought process helps you start to answer big questions like, when should I act and when should I hold back? How do I know how much to push myself or how much to let go? There isn't one perfect answer to these questions. You have to be willing to look within and practice this kind of self-reflection to find a balance. Ask yourself, what would I be doing if I hadn't let this past experience shape me so much? You might find it surprising to see who you would be if you weren't so affected by past hurts. Imagine someone does something you dislike and you form strong opinions about them. Then ask yourself, if they hadn't done that one thing, would I feel the same way about them? This exercise lets you see the person and situation more clearly, free from unnecessary judgments. The goal is to rise above these old patterns. You don't ignore or suppress your feelings, you just put them in their right place, which usually means giving them very little influence. The past is gone, so you can learn from it, but don't let it leave scars that haunt you. These memories don't need to control your present life. Think of your mind like a computer. It has memory, but it doesn't bring up past events randomly, reminding you of them every day. Learning from the past is good, but carrying impressions that hold you back isn't helpful. You learn from your experiences, but you don't let them leave lasting marks on your mind and emotions. These marks, or impressions, are known as samskaras. How do you keep experiences from leaving these emotional or mental scars? By practicing letting go. I teach you this all the time because it's central to how you make the best use of your life. Things will happen, and they may trigger uncomfortable feelings or past issues. But that's okay. Instead of clinging to these feelings, you say thank you for the lesson, and you let them go. Keep letting go, again and again. Over time, you'll reach a point where you realize that life knows what it's doing, and you're part of this bigger picture. If you let go enough, you start to flow in harmony with that bigger picture. Letting go doesn't mean you'll always get what you want. Life isn't about getting exactly what you desire. Think of it like a leaf falling from a tree. The leaf doesn't know where it will land, but if you look back, you'll see how things worked out beautifully. When you're in harmony with the natural flow of life, or what some call God, amazing things can happen, like helping others or achieving things you didn't even imagine. That's the idea behind the saying, "Not my will, but thy will be done." This is the essence of spiritual teachings, though most people focus more on their personal wants and how to avoid what they don't like. But real spiritual practice asks us to go beyond personal desires and act from a place of right action. For example, if a storm is coming, Right action would be to wrap things up early so everyone can get home safely. Doing what's needed in the moment doesn't make it any less important than your bigger goals. It's about tuning in to what's right in each situation. Many people write to ask the biggest question: how do I know when to act and when to let things be? They might say, I'm in a lawsuit with my business partner or ex-spouse, and I'm not sure if I should keep fighting or just let it go. This question comes up so often, and they feel overwhelmed by all the details. But the real question is, where are you coming from? What's your intention? Ask yourself, are you fighting just to make sure you don't get cheated because it happened to you before? Or is it about making sure nobody can walk all over you? Maybe it's about proving yourself after a difficult marriage or relationship. If that's where your motivation comes from, look closely at it. The answer to what you should do might be clearer than you realize. So how do you use these experiences in a spiritual way? Look inside yourself. This doesn't mean that if someone is suing you or a difficult situation arises, you just give up or ignore it. It's about approaching the situation with a sense of balance, looking for what's best, not only for you but for everyone involved. Try to ask, how can I serve here? What is the best action for all involved? Imagine how you would handle things if you weren't held back by jealousy, fear, insecurity, or any other internal block. Think of it this way. If you could set aside these obstacles, how would you act? Then try to act from that place of clarity and compassion. This can be difficult. Sometimes it feels like a part of you is being torn away, as your ego resists letting go of its desires or fears. This is what is meant by dying to be reborn. Letting go of old patterns, even when it's painful, to step into a higher way of living. It's like a child wanting a toy and having to let go of that desire. Coming from this higher place takes practice, but it opens up a more peaceful, fulfilling way of life, where you're not controlled by wants and fears, but are instead acting from your best self. Now, when your mind starts saying, I want this or I don't want that, just respond by relaxing. Let go of those thoughts. In the beginning, this can feel hard because it may seem like you're giving something up or missing out. But soon you'll realize, wow, this feels good. I don't actually need to react to every single thought. I don't need to chase everything my mind says I need, and I don't need to avoid everything it tells me to fear. Over time, you'll see that nothing bad happens if you don't follow every thought. You'll realize you're okay, even if you don't rush to obey your mind's demands. The truth is, almost all of the things our minds worry about, things that could go wrong, never actually happen. But worrying about them can make us stressed and anxious. We feel tense because we believe our mind's warnings, even though most don't come true. Imagine if you just relaxed instead. What you'd likely find is that things turn out fine. And all those times your mind says, I need this, or I have to have that, you often don't end up wanting it as much as you thought, or you might not even get it in the end. Then you feel disappointed, or even resentful. But if you learn to relax and let go of those thoughts, you start feeling something better, peace. You're trading stress for calm. Why do you feel more peaceful? Because you're no longer running around, getting anxious, and reacting to every little thought. You're just letting things be. This is a deeper part of spirituality, actually letting go of your mind's constant chatter. You'll start to see that most of what your mind tells you isn't important or even real. And because you're not getting caught up in all that mental noise, you're less anxious and feel a greater sense of peace. The world keeps moving along just as it always did, but you feel lighter, less overwhelmed. Then there's a next step. Relax even more deeply. When you relax, just observe what you're experiencing in that moment without trying to change anything. It's effortless, like looking around the room and noticing what's in front of you. That's what true spirituality is about. Just being aware of what's here without any effort. When you're fully relaxed, you'll start to see something truly beautiful. And that beauty is you, not your mind, not your personality, but the real you that exists when you're at peace. People describe this beauty in many ways. Some call it light, love, or joy. It doesn't matter what word you use. It's a deep, beautiful experience within you, and when you relax deeply, that's what you begin to feel. Next, you enter a new stage of your journey. As you go deeper within yourself, you'll begin to feel something wonderful and realize this is what everyone is searching for. You'll feel a true sense of well-being, not because you're chasing what you want or avoiding what you don't want, but because you're simply at peace with yourself. You'll recognize, I'm happy, I'm okay. And in that moment, it'll dawn on you, this inner peace is what you were looking for all along. Back in the 60s, I had a phrase that went, you are what you seek. This means that everything you're searching for, love, joy, peace, harmony, strength, is already within you. It's part of who you are. And as you discover this, you naturally settle into that understanding. At this stage, you start to truly appreciate and embrace a spiritual life. And what does this spiritual life mean? It's about connecting deeply with your spirit, with your true essence. As this unfolds, something new begins to happen. You start experiencing what mystics and spiritual writers have described for centuries. Many people think spirituality is only about these deep, mystical experiences, but they often miss the important first step of connecting with their true selves. If you spend enough time living in this natural flow of peace and well-being, eventually it becomes a constant state. You go about your daily life, but you're now fueled by this inner energy. If you feel love when you meet someone, it doesn't change the fact that you already feel love within yourself. Meeting them simply adds a bit more to the love you already experience. So you're grateful. You say thank you, but you're not driven to hold on to them or possess them. You don't cling or act out of neediness. Why? Because you don't need anything external to feel whole and complete. If someone brings out this love in you, you can simply appreciate it and say thank you. If they stay in your life, that's wonderful. If they leave, you're still fine, because that love was already inside you. This brings you a deep sense of stability. At this point, you're centered in yourself. You're what people call established in the self. This isn't about enlightenment. It's about being grounded in your own being. You're drawn back to your center, and it's a beautiful place to be. Over time, as you settle further into this phase, you'll find yourself feeling free from the usual distractions and dramas of the world. You still engage with life, but from a different place. This is what it means to be in the world but not of it. You participate in life, but you're rooted within yourself and no longer need to look outside for what you already have within. You're fully centered, living from a place of inner abundance. There's a quote in the Bible that relates to this idea. Man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. Once you reach the state I'm describing, you'll understand this on a deeper level. Think about how you've gotten energy and happiness from the world around you. Maybe from someone telling you they love you, or from getting a raise, a new job, or other forms of success. All of these things are like food coming from the outside world, feeding your sense of joy and well-being. But then something shifts. Instead of needing these outer events to feel joy or energy, you'll begin to feel something coming from within. You'll feel a constant source of energy and happiness that isn't dependent on what's happening around you. This is what that quote means. Your true life force doesn't just come from the outer world, bread, but from the inner flow, like the words or energy of God within you. So what happens as you stay in this flow of inner energy? Over time, you become less attached to the ups and downs of the world. You stop depending on whether things are going well or not to feel happy. You start to feel free and calm, no matter what changes are happening around you. And after a while, whether it takes days or years, it becomes natural. Without thinking about it, you just know that this flow of energy is coming from within. And you might wonder, where is all this strength and beauty really coming from? As you keep noticing this energy within, you'll feel it almost like a gentle push from behind, as if you're standing in a flowing stream or the ocean with water pressing against your back. The energy seems to come from a source beyond you, and you start leaning into it, letting yourself rest in its flow. Just like you let go of your mind to experience inner peace, you lean back into this energy, moving beyond your everyday self, the witness or the Atman, into a larger source of energy. This process has nothing to do with thoughts, ideas, or views. It's purely an intuitive, energetic experience. As you lean into it more, the energy feels stronger and more expansive. You begin to realize that everything, the flow of love, joy, peace, all comes from this broader energy before it focuses as you. By leaning back into this energy, you go beyond your individual self, tapping into a greater universal source of consciousness. Instead of living from your usual point of awareness, where everything seems to revolve around you, you start experiencing the wider energy that mystics and spiritual seekers talk about. In this state, you move closer to a universal connection, just as the mystics describe, where the boundaries of self fade and you're part of something infinitely vast. Now, life on earth is short, just a few years, a very brief time, and in that time, I only get to see a tiny piece of it all. I only see the little part that's right in front of me, in the moment. I miss almost everything else that's happening. Can you understand that? Those of you who think you know what's going on, you actually don't know much at all. Imagine someone hands you an incredible book, filled with amazing wisdom, and you only get to read a single word before giving it back. Do you really know the book from that one word? Now think about life. At every moment, there are billions, maybe trillions of things happening all around. You only notice one small part of it. Do you really know what's happening? No, you don't. Not even close. You only know what you noticed. And in the grand scheme of things, what you noticed is such a tiny part of everything going on that it's practically nothing. Think about it. You're taking in such a small fraction of reality, it almost rounds down to zero. Yet, because it's all you have, you treat it like it's everything. But in reality, it's next to nothing. And this is the perspective we all live with, as if our small view represents the whole world, when in fact it doesn't. So how should we approach each moment knowing this? We should simply sit here and acknowledge I'm a conscious being. That's a blessing. However we got here, we don't fully understand, but we know that we're here and aware. Life is unfolding in front of us, one moment at a time. We know there are countless things going on all over that we aren't experiencing. We can't see or know it all. So instead, let's fully experience the part we are seeing. Wow, it's incredible. Let's treat this experience like a gift. This is the gift we're given, the moment in front of us. There are 7 billion people on Earth, each one experiencing something different every single moment. That's the gift they're given, just as this moment is our own unique gift. So let's come into the moment with honor, respect, and gratitude. Let's sit with the moment and say, thank you. This is the moment I get to experience. It's not about what I want or don't want, what should be or shouldn't be. It's about the humility to recognize that I didn't create this moment. I'm simply here to experience it. That's what I am, the experiencer of this moment. There are forces at work creating this entire universe. Maybe you think of them as science. Maybe you call it God. It doesn't matter. Just know that these forces are not me. The best name for the creator of the universe might just be not me, because we know it isn't us. So all we can do is sit here, receive the moment we have in front of us, and honor and respect this experience as it is. Here's the simple truth. Spirituality and living well are really the same thing. This way of being, accepting life as it comes, is the best approach to any moment. And I'm telling you, if you live this way, you'll end up being more successful in whatever you do. Why? Because you won't be struggling or fighting against what's happening. Instead, you'll be honoring and respecting the moment as it unfolds, seeing what's possible from where you are. It all begins with acceptance. Imagine playing golf, for example. You hit the ball, but it doesn't go where you wanted. It veers off into the rough instead of landing straight down the fairway. Maybe you hoped for a perfect 300 or 400-foot drive, setting you up for the perfect shot to the green. But now, here you are, stuck in a less than ideal spot. Now, should you ignore where the ball actually landed and go ahead with the club you planned to use? Should you pretend that everything is exactly as you wanted it? Of course not. If you insist on acting like you're in a better position than you are, your game won't go well. You need to start by accepting the reality of where you are, whether you like it or not. The truth is, if you don't accept it, you'll only get frustrated, which will make your next shot even harder. Instead, start by saying, "Okay, here's where my ball ended up. Let's see how well I can hit it from here, even though it's on the edge of the rough." Don't waste time wishing the ball wasn't there. That won't help you. Instead, honor the position you're in and think of it as a chance to see what you can do. How well can you manage this unexpected spot? That's where the real challenge and the fun comes in. If you can approach it this way, you'll actually enjoy the round of golf. After all, golf is meant to be enjoyable, not stressful. Your doctor probably recommended golf for relaxation, not to cause you more anxiety. And here's the thing, life works the same way. I could give example after example, and some of them might seem silly at first, until you actually experience them yourself. Imagine learning to play tennis, for instance. When you're playing and a ball is coming toward you, do you want your mind to be deciding where it thinks the ball should go? Of course not. You need to be fully present, ready to respond to whatever comes, not lost in thoughts about how things should be. In any moment, the more you can accept, honor, and engage with what's actually happening, the more you'll find yourself able to respond well, whether in sports, in work, or in life. The key is being present, respecting each moment as it is, and moving from there. This, right here, is what it means to be in the flow. Imagine playing tennis. You're not trying to predict exactly where the ball will go and dash around before it even comes near you. Instead, you stay in tune with the game, watching closely as the ball leaves your opponent's racket. You move in sync with it, flowing with its path. The goal is to become fully present, connected to the racket, the ball, the movement of your opponent, and even the rhythm of their body language. Players do much better when they play this way, responding naturally to each moment, rather than trying to guess the other player's next move and getting frustrated when it doesn't go their way. And yet, isn't this what most people do with life? We make up a picture of how we want things to be, assume that's how it should be, and act according to that picture. Then, when reality doesn't match our expectation, we feel upset or even blame life for being unfair. A wise person, however, doesn't do that. A wise person enters each moment with humility, acknowledging that they really don't know much about what's going to happen. After all, no one has experienced everything, so how can we take the few experiences we've had, add them up, and believe we now know exactly how things should turn out? That's a pretty limited way to see things. Now, some people might say, wait, if I stop planning and predicting everything, how will I know what to do? Isn't that how I guide myself? But the answer is simple. Instead of trying to control the moment based on what we want, we start listening to what's actually happening. Think about those times when you're completely in the zone in sports or any other activity. In those moments, you're fully present, without your mind getting in the way. You're not lost in thoughts of what should or shouldn't be. When that tennis ball flies toward you or you find yourself on the edge of the golf course's rough, you're right there, aware and aligned with what's in front of you. The moment isn't colored by frustration or judgment. It's just you and what's actually happening. Your focus becomes, what's the best way to respond here, instead of why isn't this the way I wanted? This approach can feel strange because we're often taught to see life as a way to get what we want. But is that really what life is about? Maybe life isn't here to meet every one of our wants. After all, most of these wants are things we've made up in our minds. Life isn't about fulfilling these wants. It's about experiencing the reality in front of us, moment by moment. Every moment brings its own reality, shaped by countless forces beyond our control. Our choice is simply this. Do we flow with the moment, or do we get stuck wanting it to be something else? When we learn to engage fully with the present, accepting what is, we find a much deeper experience. This is how we live in harmony, not struggling, but letting each moment guide us, one step at a time. This is the heart of spirituality. It's not about leaving the world behind, living in isolation, or retreating from daily life. Spirituality is simply about not getting lost in the imaginary world our mind creates. When we stay caught up in these made-up ideas and stories, we lose touch with what's actually happening around us. But when we align ourselves with reality, we find a natural sense of balance and start performing better in all areas of life. Whether we're a parent, a partner, a professional, or an athlete, we become more effective and present when we're truly interacting with what's real, right here, right now, instead of chasing some ideal image of how things should be. This is the whole journey of spirituality. It's not about belonging to any specific religion or tradition, whether Eastern or Western, Christian or Hindu. It's about being willing to step into harmony with what's real. Anyone who is ready to experience life as it unfolds, without forcing it to fit an idea, is already on this path. It's about choosing to experience life as it is, moment by moment, and discovering that true presence brings its own depth, peace, and purpose. Thank you for listening.